Hi, everyone, and welcome back for another episode of Malice in the Mitten. I am your host, Tracy Preston, along with my bestie, Christine Mulligan. Hey, Christine.
Hey, Trace. What's going on? What are we getting into today? What you got for me? What's happening?
Well, today I'm going to tell you a story of a woman who absolutely enjoyed death. She loved causing it, and in my opinion, reveled in it. Now, today's story was researched and written by Rebecca Hiers, so thank you, Rebecca. So, let's get into it. This is Season 7, Episode 25, a prolific poisoner, Mary McKnight. There really is no good way to get murdered, but at least if you are stabbed or shot, depending on where the wound is, and if you're found in time, you stand a chance of being saved. Or death can mercifully be instantaneous. Poisoning, however, is a different story. Traditionally, the murder weapon of choice for female killers, depending on the poison used and the dose, even today, you can die a slow, lingering death or a quick, painful one. Symptoms of poisoning can mimic other diseases, and often doctors don't think to look for poison as a cause of the illness or death. Arsenic, given in small doses, will build up in your system with symptoms such as diarrhea, nausea, and vomiting. Continued exposure can cause painful lesions on the skin and cause the skin to darken. Cyanide poisoning starts with a headache, dizziness, a fast heart rate, shortness of breath, and vomiting. And, if not caught in time, seizures, low heart rate, and low blood pressure, and cardiac arrest soon follow. Strychnine can be inhaled, swallowed, or absorbed through the eyes or mouth, causing muscular contractions and eventually death due to asphyxiation. Seizures can start as soon as 15 minutes after ingestion and last from 12 to 24 hours. As the poisoning progresses, the eyes start to bulge. Kidneys fail, heart rate and blood pressure rise, and lockjaw sets in. As this is going on, the facial muscles spasm, as will the back and neck, causing painful arching or hyperflexion of the back and neck. Sometimes in this state, the poisoning will cause the person to start to vomit. Eventually, death will occur, usually due to respiratory failure, which in turn will cause cardiac arrest. Strychnine has one of the most dramatic and painful reactions of all poisons. It's a horrible way to die, and the preferred method of murder for our Mistress of Michigan Malice today. Mary Ann Murphy was born in Quebec, Canada in 1854 to parents Isaiah and Sarah Murphy. She was the oldest of 8 of the Murphy children. By 1861, the family was living at Fife Lake, Michigan, a small community near Traverse City. By 1870, at the age of 14, she was living at a boarding house in Alpena and working as a domestic according to that year's census. On April 19, 1876, at the age of 22, she married James Ambrose. Her marriage record shows her as being 18 and him as 29, which doesn't work math-wise. So either she lied at the time she was married, or her death certificate and headstone are incorrect. the math is off for him as well. The math also doesn't work for the census. However, the 1880 census shows her as 24, which is in line with the 1870 census, but again, not the death certificate and headstone. James was a painter and decorator by trade, and business was good. He was known as a pleasant and friendly man. She was known as a caring and compassionate person. One article referenced her being a trained nurse and midwife, administering care and compassion to those around her. They were a well-liked social couple. The newlyweds lived in Alpena on the other side of the state from Fife Lake. On July 14th, 1887, Mary gave birth to their daughter Minnie. Now, it appears at this time that Mary was going by the name of Maggie, as that is what is listed on Minnie's birth record. Minnie would die on August 11th, 1882. She had just turned 5. Their daughter Jane died in Monroe, Michigan, while visiting her grandmother. She was 7. Both were believed to have died of diphtheria. Now, there are some reports of 3 or more of her children dying before they could even be named. But other than online articles, there is no official record of them. Ernest McKnight and his wife Catherine, or Kitty, were good friends of the Ambrose family. The 2 men were business partners, and the 2 families lived together. From all reports, they were a dual power couple set. When Mary's husband James suddenly died at age 38 in 1884, it was believed he died of consumption, now known as tuberculosis. He had been under the weather for a bit, so it wasn't totally unexpected. However, the doctor was puzzled because James died in pain and his limbs twitching violently. Soon after James's death, Kitty fell ill. Kitty's sister Gig came to nurse her and brought her husband and small daughter with her. While Gig was busy nursing Kitty, Mary watched the baby. 29-year-old Kitty died July 29th, 1886, and 2 days after her death, Kitty's infant niece would also die. The cause of death listed for both was convulsions. Overcome by grief, Mary and her daughter May went by train to visit friends in Saginaw. They were both overcome by sickness while on the train and were rushed to the hospital. While Mary recovered, May would die. She was also 5 years old. Mary would return to Grayling and live with her sister, Mrs. Margaret Chalker. She stayed there until her wedding to widow Ernest McKnight. The 2 were married on October 17, 1887, a year after Kitty's death. The newlyweds moved to Alpena, then back to Grayling. In May of 1892, Mary was visiting with Margaret, while Margaret's daughter Eliza played nearby. The adults were sitting at the table having tea when suddenly Eliza was taken ill. Foaming at the mouth, convulsing and twitching, death finally came after 4 agonizing hours of pain and misery for the girl. Puzzled doctors diagnosed the cause of death as congestive grip, as they were not sure what exactly happened to the poor girl. Now, Eliza was 13. Now, congestive grip, I've never heard of that, and it is not a recognized medical term, so I had to look that up. And from what I found, quote, this is related to grip strength and is measured by the strength of the muscles in the hand, often used as an indicator of health and frailty, which in turn is related to congestive heart failure, where the heart can't pump blood well enough to meet the needs of the body. Now, this failure is also failure in cardiac output. May also had a sister named Sarah that lived in Grayling. She was 18 years old in February of 1893 and the 7th of the 8 children. She died on the 19th. Sarah's headstone reads, quote, "Heaven benignly called thee hence, in all thy pure, sweet innocence." Her cause of death is listed as spinal. 5 years later, on Sunday, November 13th, 1898, Ernest went to check on his farm property just outside the city of Grayling. He had hay that needed to be brought in. Mary had packed him a lunch so he wouldn't have to come home. Arriving at the farm, he left the horses hitched to the wagon and started about his day. Now it was about midday when he paused to eat. He was immediately hit with stomach pains. Getting back into his wagon, thankful that he had left the horses hitched, he rode home. By the time he arrived home, the pain was unbearable. Convulsions arched his back. His throat was partially paralyzed. He went into the house and Mary put him straight to bed. It seemed he was on his way to recovery, as on Monday night, some friends visited him at his home. Ernest was sitting up in bed, smoking, and was finally able to discuss his odd symptoms. When they left at midnight, they expected to visit him again the next day. But when they arrived on November 15th, Ernest was dead. His cause of death was listed as paralysis. A few years later, Mary received word that a good friend and relative through marriage, Mrs. Catherine Schneeberger, who lived in Saginaw, was ill. Well, Catherine was a widow and her daughter needed help. Traveling by train, Mary went to assist her friend, Mrs. Mary Curry, Catherine's daughter, who was taking care of her. It was May 1901, and a few days after her arrival, Mrs. Schneeberger would be dead. In an effort to ease her friend's mind, Mary and Mrs. Curry went for a drive together. 2 days later, Mrs. Curry was dead. Catherine's cause of death was listed as heart failure, and Mary Curry's apoplexy, which we know is a heart attack. After the death of her friends, Mary returned to Grayling. Well, I guess there was no more people to kill there. Time to go home. What?
What is happening? Everywhere this woman goes, she's killing people?
I know, she's out of control.
Well, the thing is that at this time, in the 1800s, 1870, 80, 90, a lot of these people with the congestive heart or with the convulsions, which are all, yes, aligned with poisoning, but also back then, like you said, congestive grip, they were kind of just starting to make up medical terminology. So all in all, these are always contractual kind of situations where there is contraction. I don't mean like there's a piece of paper with signatures on it. I mean, there's contraction and muscles and all that, which again goes along with poisoning. But if you don't look for poisoning, you're not going to think that. Or if you don't see the pattern, you're not going to think that. So does no one see the pattern around her that everyone's dying of these seizure-like muscle contractual illnesses? Like, I don't understand. Is nobody around her witnessing the melee that she leaves in her wake?
Yeah, it's nuts. Nobody's paying attention. She is the freaking kiss of death. Really? People don't die like that around you. They're dropping like freaking flies. Nuts.
Bananas.
Yeah.
This is crazy. All right. So when do people start noticing her? Are you about to tell me that? Because I'm looking forward to when are people going to start to notice that she's like the wave of death?
Right. We're getting there, but there's still a handful more to go. Another friend, Mrs. Jensen, was taken ill in 1902 after a visit from Mary and she was hospitalized. Wanting to support her friend, Mary offered to take care of the household while Mrs. Jensen recovered.
Oh, no.
On Good Friday, while under Mary's care, Mrs. Jensen's young daughter, Dorothy, was skipping rope and playing with other children. Everything seemed normal. Mary, talking with a neighbor later that night, said that Dorothy had just worn herself out with all the playing and was now seriously ill. A doctor was sent for, but by the time he arrived, Dorothy was dead. Her death certificate says, "Died suddenly after fainting." The good doctor said, quote, "She was dead when I arrived. The cause of death is overexertion from skipping rope." She was 6 years old.
Can we just talk about how I'm really getting the heebie-jeebies because most of the people that she's murdering are young. Why is that?
Yeah, I don't know.
Does she just hate children? What's happening?
Maybe she just saw them as easy prey. But
Because while you were talking and you're telling me this, I'm thinking, okay, so back in that day, like if you're with the person the last and you can just kind of like lay claims to their stuff, is that why she's murdering people? Is because she's kind of collecting trinkets from them as she leaves them? But the fact that it's children, that doesn't fit. You know what I mean?
agreed. I think
There's
she...
nothing you're going to get from them. So where's the scam?
I think...
What's she getting out of this?
Right.
That's my question.
I don't know. It's almost like she revels in having that type of control, that type of power. But children, I mean, it's bad enough if it's going to be an adult, but little children?
Well, I'm
sadistic.
trying to think she's psycho that she couldn't have, because she doesn't have any children of her own, right?
No, she had plenty, but they all died.
Oh.
Yeah, she killed her own fucking kids.
Oh my goodness. I don't get it. I don't understand. Okay.
I know. It's bananas.
I'm lost.
All right. So the 6-year-old little girl had also suffered from convulsions and foaming at the mouth. On December 3rd, 1902, Mary's brother William was shot and killed in Gray Lane. He was only 21 years old. Newspaper at the time and books published since then hint at a link to Mary and his death, but never quite say what that link was. Mary had a brother, John, that lived on the family farm at Fife Lake. Isaiah had died in 1894, and John continued to live with his widowed mother. Also living on the farm were siblings Charles, Dan, and a sister. Now, many references state the sister was, quote, excuse the term, it's really outdated, but I have to say it because it goes with the time, that she was, quote, mentally retarded. But I can find no name for her, and all of her siblings have been accounted for, except for this one. She could be an exaggeration of the times and may not really exist. There is no headstone, no grave marker, no name, and no death certificate for this girl. Now, John had married Gertrude Ward in 1902, and the two had just started a family in 1903. With nobody left in Gray Lane except her sister Margaret, Mary sold her property in Gray Lane and moved back to Fife Lake and in with the rest of the family on the farm. She would help around the house and with baby Ruth. Ruth was only 3 months old in May of 1903. Not aware of the trail of death that followed Mary, John and Gertrude went to town, leaving Ruth in the care of her aunt and grandmother. The couple were building a new house, and Gertrude wanted to get some last-minute items for it. They were scheduled to move into the new house the very next day. When they returned a few hours later, shortly before noon, Ruth was dead in her crib. Mary claimed the girl had begun to have spasms after they left. The parents were overcome with grief. John went into the town of Fife Lake to get a tiny coffin for his young daughter. Gertrude stayed behind with Mary, who was to comfort her. But when John returned, just a few hours later, Gertrude was also dead. It was believed she died from epileptic fits out of the fucking blue. Oh my God. Gertrude and Rose were buried in the same coffin, with Gertrude cradling the small infant in her arms. 10 days later, still consumed with grief, John would follow his wife and child to the grave on May 2nd. His cause of death was listed as asthma and heart disease. It would later be amended to say, quote, murder by strychnine poisoning. Ruth's death certificate states spasms as a cause of death and was also later amended to read murder by strychnine poisoning. Gertrude's death certificate was also amended from epileptic fits as a cause of death to murder by strychnine poisoning.
Yeah, so somebody finally makes the connection, but do they recognize that she's the link? I mean, like, she was there. For all three of these deaths, she's at this home, right?
They're just not getting it. They're not connecting the freaking dots, Christine.
Really?
Yeah. So listen to this. Despite all the death that surrounded her, nobody suspected Mary of murder until Mary made one fatal error. Mary took a document to the county clerk, and the document raised the mortgage of the Murphy farm in her favor from $200 to $600, meaning that John had borrowed the money from her to pay for his house. Supposedly, John had given the document to Mary just before his death, but it didn't make any sense to the authorities. Why would he do that? Why would he borrow more money from her than the farm cost? Why would there not be a copy of the mortgage for the higher amount already on record? Well, Mary claimed the difference in the amounts was due to her loaning him money for the funerals of his wife and daughter. Believing she was trying to pull a scam, Kalkaska County Sheriff Crichton did some digging and found out that John had a life insurance policy for $1,000. Back then, that is a ton of money. The policy funds were to go to Gertrude if John died, but if she was already dead, then their child. If the child and Gertrude were dead, the money was to go to his heirs, meaning, in her mind, to Mary. She would also receive the $600 from the sale of his farm with her mortgage note. Quietly, with no word to anyone, a few days after his burial, the body of John was exhumed and an autopsy was performed. Since he had not been dead that long, his stomach contents were still whole and were found to contain strychnine. Enough strychnine to have killed many men. A young girl who also lived at the Murphy home as a housemaid said that she had seen Mary ask a farmer to purchase strychnine for her. The farmer, Joseph Battenfield, confirmed that Mary had asked him to purchase the poison for her on April 29th so that she could kill mice on the farm. Now, questioning others that lived on the farm, officers were told there were no mice. Confident that Mary had murdered her brother, sister-in-law, and niece, Sheriff Crichton went to question her, and when he got to the Murphy farm, well, Mary was gone. She had boarded the train bound for Kalkaska. Officers were able to beat the train to its next stop, and at the train station in Walton, Michigan on May 31st, Mary was arrested. After finding poison in John's stomach on June 3rd, the bodies of Gertrude and Ruth were also exhumed and sent to Ann Arbor for testing. Tests would confirm the presence of strychnine in their stomachs as well. To say the Murphy family was complex is an understatement. John had been married before and had a child with that wife. However, he had divorced that wife 5 months before the child's birth due to his belief that the child was not his, but rather his brother Dan's. At the time he had taken out the life insurance policy, he had named Dan as sole beneficiary. After the divorce, Dan was promptly removed. He had also disowned the child. Mary, as the oldest and head of the house, felt the insurance money belonged to her. The insurance company felt differently and held off dispersal of the money until the legitimacy of the child could be determined. If it could be proven that the child was in fact John's and not Dan's, the money would go to the child, not Mary. Dan was initially considered a suspect due to the entire paternity issue, but a closer look at Mary's background quickly dismissed him as a suspect. Well, good. The sheriff also discovered Mary had contacted an attorney about the life insurance and the disowned child. A further look into the life insurance of both her husbands show that she collected about $2,000 on each man for a total of $4,000. Now that's roughly $153,000 in today's money.
Yeah, it's a big, big difference. You know, I love that.
Today's value. Yeah, I love it too. It's like, whoa, back in the early 1900s, like that is a shit ton of money. I'd like to have $153,000.
Yeah.
On June 9th, 1903, Sheriff Crichton swore out a murder warrant on Mary, and they continued to hold her at the Kalkaska County Jail. Now, Mary was questioned repeatedly, and of course, she denied the murders. Finally, with her mother as a witness, she confessed. When asked why, she supposedly replied that she, quote, liked to go to funerals. To be fair to Mary, funerals were about the biggest social events in town at the time, and she was pretty social. She would later state, quote, I did give the baby strychnine. It woke up and cried while its mother was gone. And I mixed up a bit of the strychnine in a glass with some water and gave a spoonful of it to the baby. I didn't mean to harm the little thing at all. I confessed all I did to the Lord this afternoon, and I feel He has forgiven me. She later admitted to giving the poison to Gertrude. Then, seeing how sad her brother was, she stated she administered it to him also because she, quote, thought it best that he died also. Held in jail until the start of her trial on October 23rd, Mary was found in her cell, standing on a chair with a strap wrapped around her neck and attached to the ceiling of her cell. The sheriff called it a cry for attention, as it would have been easy for her to kick the chair out from under her, which she did not do. Freaking coward.
I guess she wasn't looking forward to going to her own funeral.
Yeah, that's one she wasn't interested in. At the time of her arrest, Mary was described as a cool, calculating woman, a keen businesswoman, able to look out for her own interest. By the time her trial started, she was described as a shell of the woman she used to be. Some papers had a field day with her, though. The June 12, 1903, Detroit Free Press said in part, quote, the fact remains that she is a distorted and unnatural representative of her sex and race. She seems to belong in an asylum for the criminally insane. I agree.
Yeah, but geez, did this woman have to take us all down with her?
I know. She took everybody around her with her.
Oh, God. Yeah, but I'm saying for her sex and race.
Right.
She just prolonged the patriarchy.
Right, right.
Crazy witch. Damn it!
Now, Mary's trial would begin in December of 1903. Mrs. Dine, a visitor at the Murphy home back in May, testified that she had seen Mary give Gertrude the strychnine. Mrs. Dine would claim that Mary said, quote, "I know this will kill John inside of 2 weeks," as she administered the poison. Her defense would try to claim that she was insane at the time of the murders. However, Dr. Long from the Ionia Asylum for the Criminally Insane would testify that she was not. Mary's defense would also try to claim mistreatment while she was being held, but was unable to provide any proof. Although her mother had died in August, the written confession she gave in front of her mother was admitted into evidence. Joseph Battenfield would testify that as he was driving to town one day, she stopped him and gave him money for the strychnine. Mary Mullen, the housemaid, testified she took the strychnine from him when he delivered it to the house later in the day, that she took it in the house, laid it on the table, and never saw it again. Mullen also testified there were no mice at the house, as they had 10 cats. Joseph Battenfield would also testify that he came to the house when Sarah summoned him to help with John. John was lying in bed, dressed in a flannel gown. Sweat rolled off of his face and blood bubbled from his mouth. Mary sat across the room, silently crying. Joseph was trying to hold a bottle of camphor to John's nose, and John cried out, quote, "Hold me down, Joe. My feet will come up." As Joseph pressed his knees against John's legs, John twitched and convulsed for at least 2 more minutes before he mercifully died. Mary's sister Martha Woodard testified to Mary's sterling character. Her sister Margaret and Margaret's husband William stood by her side through the entire trial. Dressed in black, holding a black bordered handkerchief in her hand, in which she occasionally buried her face, Mary listened to the testimony with no emotion. Head down, looking neither left nor right. She just sat, motionless, while the trial swirled around her. On December 10th at 1:30 p.m., after 28 hours of deliberation, the jury returned the verdict of guilty of murder in the first degree. Upon hearing the verdict, Mary said quietly, quote, "I did not mean them any harm." Judge Chittenden looked upon her and pronounced, quote, "You have been found guilty of the crime of murder. And what makes it worse is that the victim is your brother. In pronouncing sentencing on you, I have no choice in the matter. But even if I had the power to lighten your sentence, I should give you the full extent of the law, Mrs. McKnight. The sentence of the court is that you spend the remainder of your natural life in the state prison at Jackson." While waiting for the jury to arrive at the verdict, Mary and Margaret were left alone for a few moments. Margaret looked at Mary and said, quote, "This will probably be our last moment alone. They will probably send you to prison for life. Now, I want to know why you killed them." Mary simply replied, quote, "I have nothing to say." Taken to Jackson Prison the next day, she would become prisoner number 7958. The 1910 census shows her working as a cleaner in the prison. Now, here's what's nuts. Mary did not serve her full term behind bars. Don't ask me why. She was released in 1921 after only serving 18 years at Jackson Prison. Must have been for good behavior. Shouldn't have any access to freaking poison.
Yeah, that's crazy. She's obviously a good con artist, and she must have, spent those, 18 years she was in prison?
Mm-hmm.
She just them making the right friends, cleaning and acting all sweet and innocent. She probably went back out and started murdering people again, and nobody was the wiser.
She was a freaking chameleon, right? Because she was never connected to all those other deaths, which is absolutely insane.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Mary died in Detroit on December 25th, Christmas Day, 1941. Her death certificate states she's the widow of George McKnight. Who he is a mystery for another time. Could it be another name for her second husband? His first name was James, but he went by Ernest. Could she have changed his name after her release to distance herself from her crimes? Well, I say probably.
You said that the judge, when he sentenced her, called her Mrs. McKnight.
Right. Now, she was married to McKnight, but it wasn't the first name of the McKnight.
Oh.
That's the difference.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Now, Mary's story was well known at the time around the entire state of Michigan. Mary died at St. Mary's Hospital due to complications from diabetes. Her left leg had become gangrenous and had been amputated on December 19th. Now, at the bottom of her death certificate is a handwritten note that says, quote, "The patient is unable to give a coherent history, and her friends seem to be unable to provide that information." Could it be that upon her release and starting a new life, she didn't tell her new friends of her time in prison or what her name really was? Mary has never been tried for any of the other murders that took place around her, but her total body count is believed to be as high as 18. Now, if this is true, she is one of the most prolific murderers in the state of Michigan and its first recorded female serial killer. Could Dan actually be the killer, not knowing the life insurance had changed? Did he set her up? Did the two make a plan to split the money, and since she was the only one caught, he just let her take the fall alone? Or was she guilty of murder, even the ones she wasn't charged with? And I say 100%. That's just me being judgy, but please.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. How would we know if Dan was around for any of those? If he was lurking around her and she was just the one doing the deeds? Because then she would be like just another Bonnie and Clyde.
Right.
You know, listening to her man doing what Dan was her brother, right? Mm-hmm. Not her man.
Right. Remember, there was the whole, it could have been my brother, whose baby this is, kind of a sitch.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Well, Dan does seem a little shysty from the little we know about him. I don't know. I don't know, but she obviously was the one that gave the people the strychnine, at least the 3 that she got convicted of. And it kind of seems like she was the one with the access to the other people that she would go care for, quote unquote. So I don't know. I think this woman was a little bit batshit crazy.
Yeah, she was. And you would think that they're like, okay, let's do a little more research. I mean, didn't you realize like all the people who had died are in our presence? I don't think it would take that much work to put that together. If they had gone after all that, she should have been in prison for life.
Yeah, and the actual fact that she would use strychnine, which is kind of like violent, it's a violent death. If you think of an epileptic seizure with breathing issues, I mean, it's got to be a sight to see, to watch someone pass of that. And she was always front and center watching them do it, just acting as if she didn't know what was happening.
Yeah.
So her being the first female serial killer of Michigan, that tracks, because I think she just liked watching people suffer and die. That's insane to me.
Yeah, and the attention she got afterwards, right? All I can think of is Munchausen by proxy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Nuts.
Twisted.
Yeah, Mary is wackadoo.
Yeah, she is.
Oh my God. Absolutely great story. Thank you, Becky. I don't know how you find this shit, but you're amazing. So if you found our story interesting and would love to hear more from us, please like, share, and subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to. We appreciate you listening, and we look forward to bringing you more tales of Michigan malice.
But I just had an idea. Maybe Malice in the Mitten should have a murdering Mary, the Michigan Murderous Mary.
Oh.
Michigan Murderous Mary, or something like that. It's a lot of M's. I'm loving it.
The triple M.
The murdering Michigan Mary.
It's the triple M. She's crazy.
Yeah.
Now we know who she is. Totally crazy. Well, thank you, everyone. As always, we appreciate you. So thank you. Have a great week, and we will all see you guys back on Wednesday for Round Robin. Have a great week, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.